Imagine standing on a high plateau in what is today Morocco, Ethiopia, or Kenya. The air is warm, scented with damp soil and grasses. Herds of antelope graze on open savannas. Acacia trees cast scattered shade, and a river winds through a valley where hippos grunt in the shallows. This is Africa 300,000 years ago, a continent alive with predators and prey, thunderclouds building on the horizon. Among this landscape lives a new kind of human. They look strikingly familiar to us, tall and slender, faces flatter than their ancestors with delicate brow ridges and prominent chins. Their skulls hold brains close in size to ours, though slightly longer and lower. These people are Homo sapiens, the earliest members of our own species. Archaeological discoveries, from fossilized bones at Jebel Irhoud in Morocco to Omo Kibish in Ethiopia, reveal that by about 300,000 years ago, populations of Homo sapiens were already spread across northern and eastern Africa. They did not appear overnight. They were the result of a long evolutionary story stretching back millions of years through species such as Homo erectus and Homo heidelbergensis. Over many generations, natural selection shaped bodies adapted for endurance walking and running, clever hands for shaping stone, and brains capable of complex planning. Life for these early people was anything but easy. They shared the land with formidable animals, lions, leopards, saber-toothed cats, hyenas, and crocodiles. Seasonal droughts tested their resilience, and injuries or illness could mean death without help from companions. Yet they were survivors, flexible, cooperative, and endlessly inventive. Fossil evidence tells us that their skeletons were fully modern in proportion: long legs, narrow hips and shoulders, and relatively small faces. Stone tools found alongside bones show that they made Levallois flakes. Carefully prepared cores struck to create razor-sharp edges. They carried scrapers and spear tips, evidence of hunting skills and butchering techniques far beyond those of earlier hominins. Around their hearths, they may have exchanged stories, gestures, and early words forming a shared language. Charred bones indicate they cooked meat, roots, and seeds over fire. Ochre pigments hint at symbolic behavior, perhaps body painting, decorating tools, or marking territory. These fragments suggest minds capable not only of survival, but of imagination. The chapter's purpose is to set the scene: a vibrant Africa, a brand new species emerging with traits that would eventually allow it to explore the globe. Over the next sections, we'll examine how they hunted, gathered, sheltered, raised children, and slowly built cultures that laid the foundation for everything humans would become. To understand the dawn of our species, scientists look for traces left in stone and bone. Across Africa, a remarkable map of discovery tells the story of Homo sapiens' earliest days. One of the most famous sites is Jebel Irhoud, a windswept plateau in Morocco. Here, miners in the 1960s uncovered skull fragments and stone tools, first thought to be much younger. Decades later, improved dating revealed an astonishing age, roughly 300,000 years old. These fossils displayed faces almost like ours, with smaller brows and flatter cheeks, but their skulls were slightly longer from front to back. They were unmistakably close relatives, showing that our lineage stretched further into the past than anyone imagined. Farther south, in Ethiopia's Omo Valley, scientists found the Omo Kibish fossils, dated to about 195,000 years ago. Nearby at Herto, skulls around 160,000 years old revealed refined features and clear evidence of careful treatment after death, possibly early signs of ritual or respect for the deceased. These finds confirm that early Homo sapiens were not confined to a single corner of Africa. Instead, they lived in scattered populations, exchanging genes and ideas across grasslands, lakeshores, and forests. Over time, regional groups blended, giving rise to a diverse but interconnected species. Fossils alone do not tell the whole story. Layers of stone tools accompany them, points shaped with the Levallois technique, blades hafted to wooden shafts, scrapers for hides, and even pigment-stained stones. Each artifact whispers about hands that chipped, sharpened, and experimented. They show a leap in skill. People plan the shape of a tool before striking stone, a level of foresight and mental rehearsal new to human history. Advances in genetics have added another dimension. By comparing DNA from living people, researchers have traced all modern humans back to populations in Africa around 200–300,000 years ago. This genetic map supports the fossil evidence, painting a picture of small, mobile bands spreading across the continent, carrying with them shared ancestry. Equally telling are the sites where traces of fire appear alongside tools and bones. Hearths of charcoal and ash suggest deliberate use of flame, a technology vital for warmth, cooking, and protection from predators. Some camps show layers built up over years, proof that people returned to favored places season after season. Each bone, flake, and ember is a fragment of a puzzle. Together they reveal that Homo sapiens were not a sudden invention, but a mosaic, traits of body and mind emerging step by step, selected by the challenges of African landscapes. By 300,000 years ago, the pieces had come together enough to make a creature we would recognize as one of us. When we picture the first Homo sapiens, it's tempting to imagine people exactly like us. In reality, they were close but not identical, a fascinating blend of modern features and lingering echoes of older humans. Fossil skulls from Jebel Irhoud, Omo Kibish, and Herto reveal a slender face with delicate cheekbones and a clear chin. Their brow ridges were smaller than those of earlier hominins, such as Homo heidelbergensis or Neanderthals, giving them a more open, expressive forehead. The brain case, however, was slightly elongated compared with ours today, shaped like a gentle football rather than a round ball. Inside was a brain about the same volume as ours, roughly 1,300 cubic centimeters, suggesting comparable potential for memory, planning, and social thinking. Their bodies were built for endurance. Long legs, narrow hips, and springy Achilles tendons meant they could walk or run great distances over hot savannas. A light frame made it easier to shed heat, while skin rich in sweat glands helped regulate temperature during long hunts or treks to water. Hands were remarkably dexterous. Thumb bones show they could pinch, twist, and press with precision. This skill allowed them to craft stone blades, haft wooden spear shafts, and scrape hides for clothing or bedding. Even tiny flake scars on tools tell us they struck at just the right angles, a sign of practiced technique and careful thought. Teeth and jaws reveal a diet mixing meat, plants, and roots. Their molars were slightly larger than ours, good for grinding tough foods, while strong front teeth helped strip meat from bones. Isotopic studies of fossil enamel suggest they consumed a wide variety of resources: antelope and zebra, freshwater fish, wild fruits, and starchy underground tubers. The voice box, inferred from skull base anatomy and the position of the hyoid bone, hints that they may already have had a vocal range approaching our own. Although we don't know exactly what their speech sounded like, they probably used a combination of words, tone, and gesture to coordinate hunts or share knowledge. Clothing was likely simple: hides or plant fibers to shield against wind or cool nights. Their homes were even simpler: caves, overhangs, or brush shelters shaped from branches and leaves. Yet these humble spaces were revolutionary because they represented planned living areas where groups gathered, worked, and slept. In short, anatomically modern humans 300,000 years ago were not crude brutes. They were resourceful, agile, and socially connected, carrying the physical toolkit needed for a life of exploration and cooperation. Every movement, from napping stone to carrying a child, reflected the evolutionary journey that set our species apart. 300,000 years ago, life for Homo sapiens was a constant balancing act between opportunity and danger. Africa offered rich rewards: fertile riverbanks, teeming herds, stands of fruit trees. But it also held predators, shifting weather, and the challenge of keeping a small community alive. Shelter and home bases. Early humans chose camp locations carefully. They favored caves with wide mouths and dry floors, or overhanging cliffs that offered shade. In open country, they built simple brush shelters by leaning branches together and weaving grasses across them. These homes were not permanent. Groups moved when resources ran low or seasons changed. Yet evidence of hearths and tool debris shows they often returned to favored spots year after year, turning them into ancestral gathering places. Finding food. Diet was impressively varied. Men and women both hunted, trapped, and gathered. They used long wooden or stone-tipped spears to bring down gazelle, antelope, or young zebra. On coasts or near rivers, they caught fish and collected shellfish. Foragers dug up starchy tubers with sharpened sticks, stripped honey from wild hives, and picked berries, figs, and nuts. This flexible menu meant they could survive in grasslands, wetlands, or forest edges. Cooking and fire. Fire was a cornerstone of their survival. Hearths dotted with charcoal show that they knew how to maintain flames using dry wood or dung as fuel. Roasting meat softened tough fibers and made it safer to eat. Smoke drove away biting insects, and glowing embers offered warmth against the chill of desert nights or mountain winds. Tools for daily tasks. Stone technology was everywhere. Hunters shaped razor-edged flakes to cut hides or butcher carcasses. Scrapers smoothed wooden shafts or tanned animal skins for clothing. Needles made from bone may have stitched hides into crude garments or slings for carrying infants. Each tool reflected planning and teaching, elders passing skills to the next generation. Community and sharing. Groups were likely made up of 20 to 40 people, extended families or allied bands. Cooperation meant survival. Hunters shared game, gatherers pooled fruit or nuts, and everyone helped protect children from predators. Around evening fires, they may have told stories through gesture, song, or the first true speech. Laughter and play strengthened bonds, while elders offered wisdom from years of navigating harsh terrain. Dangers and challenges. Life was dangerous. Lions and leopards prowled the darkness. Crocodiles lurked near watering holes. Sudden drought could empty rivers, and heavy rains could sweep away shelters. Accidents, a fall, a cut, an infected wound, could become fatal without group support. Yet burial-like behavior seen at some sites hint that communities cared for sick or injured members, a compassion rare among animals. Seasons and movement. Mobility was key. When grasslands dried, people followed migrating herds or searched for greener valleys. Rainy seasons might bring abundance, fish trapped in pools, fresh roots pushing through soil, while dry months demanded careful planning. This rhythm of movement trained them to read the land, anticipate weather, and store mental maps of waterholes, cliffs, and game trails. By blending ingenuity, social bonds, and deep knowledge of their environment, early Homo sapiens turned Africa's challenges into opportunities. Their way of life prepared them, and us, for the extraordinary journeys yet to come. By 300,000 years ago, Homo sapiens were not just surviving, they were thinking ahead, reshaping their world with tools and symbols that revealed a growing inner life. Stone mastery. At campsites from Morocco to Kenya, archaeologists uncover blades, scrapers, and spear points shaped with remarkable care. The levallois technique was their signature, a way of striking flakes from a prepared stone core, producing edges sharp as a razor. Some points were attached to wooden shafts with plant resin or sinew, creating efficient throwing or thrusting spears. This precision meant hunters could strike game more safely and reliably than ever before. Beyond stone, they also worked other materials, bone, antler, and wood, though few survived the ages. Traces suggest digging sticks for roots, wooden clubs, and possibly slender needles for piercing hides. Such objects demanded patience, steady hands, and a mental picture of the finished tool. Color and symbol. Among the most intriguing finds are lumps of red ochre scratched with cross-hatched lines or ground into powder. These pigments may have been used to paint bodies, decorate tools, or mark territory. At sites like Blombos Cave, slightly younger, 100,000 years ago, carved ochre pieces hint at abstract thought already present in their ancestors. Even if these early marks had practical uses, like softening hides or repelling insects, their deliberate patterns suggest a budding sense of style or meaning. The birth of storytelling. We cannot hear their voices, but anatomical evidence shows they likely had the physical ability to speak in complex sounds. Combined with gestures, rhythm, and facial expression, these early conversations may have carried hunting strategies, warnings, or tales of the past. Around a fire, a leader might mime the day's hunt, or an elder could pass along wisdom about safe paths or hidden waterholes. This exchange of knowledge bound groups together and stored lessons beyond any single lifetime. Music and rhythm. Some researchers propose that clapping, stamping, or hitting sticks against logs formed the earliest music. Simple rhythms may have helped coordinate group tasks, driving game toward traps, for instance, or soothed infants at night. Whether or not they sang, these people almost certainly felt the power of shared sound. Artistic sparks. While full-fledged art would flourish much later, the seeds were present. Perhaps a child scratched patterns in sand, or an adult traced animal shapes with a charred stick. Such acts, though fleeting, represented imagination at work, the ability to create something not strictly necessary for survival. Learning and teaching. Innovation required teaching. Children likely sat beside elders, watching as they struck flakes from stone or mixed ochre with fat to make paste. Knowledge passed carefully from one generation to the next ensured skills improved instead of being lost. This cultural continuity set Homo sapiens apart from other animals. By marrying technology with creativity, early humans built more than tools. They built culture. Their ingenuity and curiosity planted the first seeds of art, language, and science. Those sparks would one day ignite the masterpieces of cave painters, the melodies of music, and the inventions that shape our world. The story of Homo sapiens is not just about bones and tools, it's also about climate. Around 300,000 years ago, Africa was a continent of shifting moods. Wet and dry periods alternated over thousands of years, carving new lakes, greening deserts, or turning savannas into parched dust. A continent in motion, geological records show that rainfall patterns fluctuated as Earth's orbit and tilt shifted sunlight across the hemispheres. In wetter phases, vast grasslands stretched from North Africa to the Cape, dotted with acacia trees and teeming with antelope, elephants, and giraffes. Rivers swelled and lakes expanded, creating fertile zones where people could fish, gather plants, and hunt. During dry spells, these lush corridors shrank, sand dunes advanced, rivers dwindled, and herds moved on in search of grazing. For early humans, survival meant mobility, tracking the rains, following animals, and memorizing a patchwork of oases, springs, and hidden valleys. Tools for adaptation, changing environments drove innovation. Spears and digging sticks became essential as diets shifted from grazing animals to roots, seeds, and smaller game. When a once reliable waterhole dried up, families loaded their baskets and moved toward greener pastures, often traveling tens of kilometers on foot. Coastlines and lakeshores. When inland plains grew harsh, coasts offered relief. Shell middens, heaps of discarded mollusk shells, show that people harvested clams, mussels, and oysters. Lakeshores were also hubs. Fish, waterbirds, and reeds for weaving all gathered in one place. Such locations may have fostered gatherings between bands, encouraging the exchange of mates, tools, and ideas. Landscape as teacher, the land itself trained human minds. Reading clouds, sensing the smell of rain, noticing the tracks of antelope, all demanded sharp observation and memory. A successful forager needed to understand how seasons affected plants, when herds would arrive, or which caves stayed cool in summer. This deep ecological awareness honed intelligence just as much as toolmaking did. Refuges and pathways. Some areas remained stable even as climates swung. These refugia, like Ethiopia's highlands or parts of southern Africa, may have sheltered groups during harsh droughts. At other times, corridors of green opened across the Sahara, linking east and west. Such windows allowed people to spread, meeting others and blending genes, creating a broad network of related communities. Fire and shelter against extremes. Mastery of fire offered insurance against cold nights or unexpected storms. Hearths allowed cooking of tough roots and warming of soaked bodies after downpours. Shelters could be hastily improved with hides to keep out wind-blown sand or rain. The long view. By adapting to climate's whims, Homo sapiens became specialists in flexibility. They learned to plan beyond the moment, store food, and map out travel routes. These lessons in resilience prepared them for even greater adventures, the eventual migrations beyond Africa that would populate the world. Climate was never just background scenery. It was a teacher, a challenger, and sometimes an adversary. Those who could read its signs and adjust thrived, passing on their genes and knowledge. The ever-changing African landscapes forged humans who could not only endure but imagine futures beyond the horizon. By 300,000 years ago, Homo sapiens were not alone. Across Africa and Eurasia, several other human species thrived, each adapted to its own environment. The world was a patchwork of cousins, some close, some distant, and contact between them would shape our story forever. Neighbors in Africa, Within Africa itself, fossils show that our ancestors shared the continent with other lineages sometimes called archaic Homo sapiens. These groups, such as those found at Florisbad in South Africa or sites in Nigeria and Tanzania, may have looked broadly similar but kept certain older traits, heavier brow ridges, thicker skulls, or slightly different body shapes. Genetic evidence hints that early Homo sapiens interbred with some of them, blending adaptations from diverse environments. Across the Mediterranean, to the north, Europe was home to Neanderthals, Homo neanderthalensis. Stocky and strong, they excelled at surviving cold climates, crafting excellent stone tools, and controlling fire. Although Neanderthals emerged later than our earliest African ancestors, they would eventually meet migrating Homo sapiens and leave a lasting genetic imprint. Tiny fragments of their DNA still live in most people outside Africa today. Denisovans in the East. Farther east, a mysterious group known as Denisovans inhabited parts of Asia. We know them mainly from DNA extracted from a finger bone and teeth in Siberia's Denisova cave. Yet their genes echo across populations in Tibet, Melanesia, and Australia. They, too, traded genes with early modern humans, gifting adaptations such as high-altitude tolerance. Why contact mattered. When different human groups met, they exchanged more than DNA. They likely shared tools, hunting strategies, and perhaps stories. These encounters may have been peaceful, trading shell beads or pigments, or tense, competing for game or shelter. Over generations, such meetings enriched our genetic diversity and spurred cultural change. Lessons from the fossil record. Although no single site captures a handshake between species, clues abound. Similar tool types appear in regions far apart, suggesting ideas traveled with people. Ancient DNA reveals a complex family tree, splits, reunions, and borrowings, rather than a straight ladder of progress. Our species was a node in a wider network of humans, all experimenting with survival. Extinction and survival. Not all these relatives endured. Many faded as climates changed or as expanding Homo sapiens occupied new lands. But their disappearance was not instant, nor entirely due to conflict. Small populations can vanish simply through chance or environmental stress. Meanwhile, Homo sapiens, flexible, cooperative, and numerous, held on and spread. A shared legacy. Today, every human carries echoes of these ancient connections. Neanderthal genes influence immunity and even hair texture. Denisovan genes help some people breathe at high altitudes. Remembering this mingled heritage reminds us that we are not the sole survivors of a lonely path. We are the heirs of a rich, intertwined history. The world our ancestors knew was alive with other humans, each with their own skills and secrets. By learning from them, and sometimes blending with them, Homo sapiens gained new strengths for the journey ahead. Every person alive today carries a biological diary of the past. Hidden inside our cells, DNA records the paths taken by our ancestors, who they met, where they settled, and how they adapted. For understanding the rise of Homo sapiens, genetics has become a time machine. DNA as a map. By comparing genetic material from people around the globe, scientists discovered that all living humans trace their ancestry back to small populations in Africa between 200,000 and 300,000 years ago. These groups were not identical. They formed a network of related communities scattered across the continent, exchanging genes and ideas over thousands of generations. Population threads. As climates shifted, some groups grew, others dwindled, and sometimes isolated bands drifted apart long enough to develop subtle differences. Yet they were still one species, able to intermarry when paths crossed. Over time, these genetic threads wove a resilient web, ensuring that even if one group faced drought or predators, its cousins might survive elsewhere. Out of Africa, around 60,000, 70,000 years ago, descendants of these early Africans began venturing beyond the continent in larger numbers. Coastlines acted as highways, leading bands eastward across the Arabian Peninsula and into Asia. Others pushed into Europe or followed rivers deep into the interior. Some reached Australia by 50,000 years ago. Others later crossed Ice Age land bridges into the Americas. Everywhere they went, they carried stories encoded in their genes. interbreeding with cousins. Genetic data shows that these travelers did not walk alone. They met Neanderthals, Denisovans, and perhaps other yet unknown humans. Small amounts of DNA from these encounters remain in us today, a testament to ancient meetings that added resilience to immune systems, metabolism, and even our ability to live in high mountains. Bottlenecks and expansi. ONS. The genetic record also reveals narrow moments when our species almost stumbled. Harsh droughts, volcanic eruptions, or disease may have cut numbers to just a few thousand breeding adults. But each time, humans rebounded, their social bonds and adaptability helping them recover and expand again. Adaptation in action. Wherever Homo sapiens settled, DNA shows quick responses to new challenges. Populations in colder regions evolved traits to conserve heat. Those in sunny tropics fine-tuned skin pigment for balance between sun protection and vitamin D production. High-altitude peoples inherited Denisovan genes, allowing them to thrive with less oxygen. The living record. Today, anyone can look at their genome and see traces of this history. Signals from the savannas of Africa, whispers from Neanderthal valleys, shadows from Denisovan caves. It's a reminder that we are all part of one long journey that began with those first fully modern humans exploring the African plains. The genetic story confirms what fossils and tools have hinted. Homo sapiens is a single, diverse family, born of Africa's landscapes and shaped by countless miles and meetings. Our survival was never guaranteed, but cooperation, curiosity, and ingenuity turned fragile beginnings into a worldwide success. The story of Homo sapiens begins not in cities or fields, but on wild African plains under ancient stars. 300,000 years ago, small bands of people learned to read the wind, nap stone, and share firelight stories. They were fragile creatures, yet they carried a spark, intelligence joined with cooperation, that would allow them to face challenges no other species could endure. Looking back, their achievements seem modest, a sharpened flake, a painted stone, a shelter of branches. But every act represented something profound, the ability to imagine a future and work together to make it real. These early humans invented a way of life based not just on instinct, but on knowledge, planning, and empathy. Their resilience holds lessons for us today. They thrived by balancing independence and community. Hunters relied on skill and daring, yet survival depended on shared food, warmth, and protection. They adapted to shifting climates, from wet savannas to dry sands, never letting change destroy their spirit of exploration. We also inherit a message of unity. Genetics reveals that all modern people descend from those first Homo sapiens. No matter our language, skin tone, or culture, we share a single origin, a web of ancestors who faced lions, droughts, and storms so that we might exist. Borders and divisions are recent inventions compared with the vast stretch of time when cooperation meant life or death. Their creativity, too, remains our gift. The ochre marks, tentative rhythms, and first words planted the seeds of art, science, and philosophy. Each invention, from fire to the written word, stands on foundations laid by unknown hands long ago. Yet our past also cautions us. Many relatives, Neanderthals, Denisovans, and other archaic humans, vanished, leaving only traces in our DNA. Survival is never automatic. The same adaptability that lifted Homo sapiens must guide us now as we face new challenges, climate change, habitat loss, and the responsibility of caring for a crowded planet. When you gaze at a sunset or hear laughter around a campfire, you share an experience with people who lived hundreds of millennia ago. Their footprints, though softened by time, lead straight to us. To honor them, we must continue the work they began, learning, sharing, imagining, and protecting the home they entrusted to us. The journey of early Homo sapiens is not just history, it's a mirror. It shows that humans are at our best when we combine curiosity with compassion, and when we see ourselves as part of a single, remarkable story stretching from the African savannas to every corner of Earth.